Have you ever noticed how intensely we desire what we cannot have? That seemingly impossible job, the person who barely notices your existence, the opportunity that always seems to slip through your fingers. And when we finally attain what we've been chasing, something strange happens. The desire diminishes, the magic fades, the value seems to evaporate into thin air. It's not just your impression. It's as if there exists an invisible force constantly pushing us towards what lies beyond our reach, whilst making us devalue what's already in our hands. Think about the relationships you've had. Remember how that seemingly indifferent person sparked such interest in you, and how often when you finally won over someone who pursued you, the enchantment quickly dissolved. This isn't coincidence. It's one of the most powerful laws of human psychology. What Robert Greene calls the law of absence. The less available you are, the more desirable you become. But why? What happens in the human mind when confronted with unavailability? What ancestral mechanism makes us chase what flees from us and flee from what chases us? The numbers speak for themselves. In a study published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, researchers discovered that objects perceived as scarce were rated as 40% more attractive by participants. Products described as limited or last units sold 3 times faster than identical items without such labeling. Our minds attribute value to what is rare, to what is difficult to obtain. This phenomenon is so deeply rooted in our psychology that it has even shaped the financial market. Cryptocurrencies with limited supply generate more interest than those with unlimited production. Unique works of art are worth millions, whilst their nearly identical reproductions are worth hundreds. Out-of-circulation collectibles reach astronomical values at auctions. It's not utility that determines value, but scarcity. And this applies not just to objects, but especially to people. This is the crucial point I want you to deeply understand. The psychology of scarcity doesn't discriminate between things and human beings. Our brain processes both through the same evolutionary lens that taught us to value what is difficult to obtain. When you're constantly available, responding to messages in seconds, cancelling your plans to accommodate others, reorganizing your life to fit into someone else's, you're signaling something dangerous, that you have no inherent value. You become like that product on the shelf that nobody buys, that's always on sale, begging to be chosen. Robert Greene understood this deeply. In The Art of Seduction, he writes, "What is rare is valuable, and what is available in abundance is devalued." This isn't manipulation, it's a psychological truth about how we function. Think about this. How many times have you become obsessed with someone who seemed unattainable? And how many times have you lost interest in someone who showed absolute devotion to you? It's not because you're cruel or ungrateful, it's because you're human. Carl Jung called this projection. When something is denied or inaccessible, we project our fantasies and idealizations onto it. Mystery creates space for desire to grow. Conversely, complete availability eliminates any space for imagination. There's nothing to discover, no territory to conquer. Jung observed this phenomenon repeatedly in his patients. Those who were obsessed with inaccessible people weren't really in love with the actual person, but with the image they projected onto them. He wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. This attraction to the inaccessible reveals more about our own needs and idealizations than about the object of desire." That's why we're often disappointed when we finally win over that person who seems so perfect from a distance. It wasn't them we desired, but the idealized version we created in our minds, a version no real human could match. Proximity dissolves the projection, and we find ourselves face to face, not with the ideal, but with imperfect reality. And here's the cruelest part of this truth. We're attracted to those who seem not to need us. The person who lives a complete life, who has their own mission, their own interests, who doesn't cancel their plans to accommodate others. This person exerts an inexplicable magnetism, not because they're cold or calculating, but because they demonstrate intrinsic value. Think about the leaders you most admire, the artists you revere, the personalities that fascinate you. They all share this quality, a sense of self-sufficiency, a purpose that transcends the need for external approval. Steve Jobs didn't create the iPhone to please customers. He followed his vision, often against market research. Great artists don't paint to please critics, but to express their inner truth. It's no coincidence that these people attract followers, fans, admirers. This is a difficult truth to swallow, especially in a culture that teaches us that being kind means always being available. But look around you. People who are always trying to please, always available, always saying yes. Do they receive more respect, more genuine love, more loyalty? Or are they often taken for granted, used, and then discarded? Research conducted by the University of Virginia found that people in relationships rated their partners as more attractive when they perceived that others desired them too. The perceived value increased by 73% when there was a suggestion of competition. Human desire is mimetic. We want what others also want. But understand, I'm not suggesting you become manipulative or play emotional games. I'm talking about a much deeper transformation, becoming truly independent, valuing your own company, building a life so rich and meaningful that you genuinely don't need constant validation from others. Jung said, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. When you find meaning in yourself, when you don't depend on others to feel complete, something magical happens. You become magnetic. And this is where most people make a fatal mistake. They pretend independence. They play availability games, take time to respond to messages, feign disinterest, but inside they're still desperate for validation. And you know what happens? People sense this. Insecurity has its own scent, and no tactic can mask it for long. True unavailability isn't about manipulation. It's about having a life so filled with purpose that you genuinely aren't available for anything that drains your energy. It's about valuing your time and peace so much that you become selective about who and what you allow into your life. Robert Greene observes, power lies in keeping others in suspense, in uncertainty, not out of cruelty, but because you're living authentically on your own terms. Mystery comes naturally when you're committed to your own growth. I want you to understand what happens psychologically when you stop being constantly available. 1. You create a vacuum, and human nature seeks to fill it. 2. You activate others' imagination. In the absence of complete information, people fill in the gaps, usually in the most favorable way. 3. You reclaim your power. By not reacting immediately, you make conscious decisions instead of responding reflexively. Think about the people in your life for whom you feel attraction, admiration, or even obsession. They likely share this quality. They aren't desperate for your approval. They have their own gravity, their own orbit. But let's be brutally honest here. Most of you are terrified of becoming unavailable. You fear that if you don't respond immediately, if you aren't always present, you'll be forgotten, replaced, abandoned. It's a legitimate fear, but based on a false premise. The idea that your availability is what makes you valuable. The reality is exactly the opposite. Your constant availability is undermining your value. It's communicating submission, insecurity, lack of self-confidence. It's screaming to the world, please notice me, please choose me. And here's the truth you may not be ready to hear. Some people in your life are counting on your excessive availability. They need you to continue diminishing yourself, continuously available, constantly needy. Your independence is a threat to them because it exposes their own dependence. Think about the reactions you get when you start establishing boundaries. Have you noticed how some people become uncomfortable, irritated, or even manipulative? You've changed, they say. You don't care about me anymore, they accuse. I thought we were close, they lament. These are revealing reactions, not of your mistake, but of an imbalance that has existed for a long time. Robert Greene observes that people become comfortable with established roles. When you change your role from always available to selectively available, you aren't just changing yourself. You're forcing a change in the entire system of relationships around you. And not everyone is prepared or willing to adapt to this new reality. When you begin to value your own company, when you start establishing boundaries, when you begin saying no without apologizing, you'll see who truly cares about you and who was merely using your availability. It's a painful filter, but necessary. It's better to have 3 people who value the real you than 30 who merely use your availability. Carl Jung wrote about the concept of individuation, the process of becoming psychologically whole, of integrating the different aspects of yourself. This process requires periods of withdrawal, introspection, unavailability to the external world. Greene complements this thought. The strategy of absence creates value like no other. It generates respect and desire. A surprising study from Harvard University showed that managers who were less accessible were 23% more likely to receive positive evaluations and were seen as 31% more competent than their more available colleagues. Our perception of value is intrinsically linked to the perception of scarcity. But how do you practice this healthy unavailability without isolating yourself or becoming cold towards those who truly matter? Here are practical exercises. First, stop responding immediately. It's not about ignoring people, but about responding in your own time. Breathe, reflect, then respond. Greene suggests establishing a personal system, perhaps checking messages only 3 times a day at specific times. This simple act interrupts the Pavlovian conditioning of reacting instantly to every notification. Second, learn to say no without explanations. "I can't make it" is a complete sentence. You don't owe explanations for your personal choices. The need to justify every refusal reveals an underlying insecurity, as if your decision by itself weren't enough. Observe how self-assured people rarely over-explain themselves. Third, establish periods of inaccessibility. Moments when your phone is switched off, when you're completely present with yourself. Jung emphasized the importance of these moments of active introversion, where you deliberately turn inward, not as escape, but as a source of psychic renewal. Start with 1 hour per day and gradually increase. Fourth, observe who becomes uncomfortable with your boundaries. People who react negatively when you begin to value your time are often those who are benefiting from your imbalance. This is an infallible thermometer of relationships based on utility versus those based on mutual respect. Don't judge, just observe with clarity. Fifth, invest in yourself during moments of solitude. Transform the absence of others into presence with yourself. Read, meditate, exercise, create. Become so interesting to yourself that your own company is not merely tolerable, but desirable. As Jung wrote, solitude is not absence of energy or action, as the crowd thinks, but rather the continuous internal activity of the imagination. Look, I understand. It's frightening at first. You'll feel guilty, selfish, even cruel. The guilt can be overwhelming. That inner voice saying, "How can you think of yourself when others need you?" You might wake up in the middle of the night wondering if you're being a terrible person for finally prioritizing your needs. You've been conditioned to believe that always being available is being good, kind, loving. Let me tell you something that perhaps no one has told you before. This discomfort is normal. It's the sign that you're growing beyond the limits that were imposed on you. It's like the muscle that aches after exercise. It's not damage, it's strengthening. And more than that, your new stance is, actually, more honest. There's a subtle falseness in always being available when you don't want to be. There's dishonesty in saying yes when you want to say no. But there's a deeper kindness that begins with being honest, with yourself and with others. A kindness that respects the other person enough to show your truth, not just what you think they want to see. Jung reminds us, know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. In the end, your authenticity, including your boundaries, is the greatest gift you can give to those around you. When you value yourself enough not to always be available, you allow others to see your true value. You create space for them to be attracted, not by your neediness, but by your completeness. It's a paradoxical truth. The less you chase, the more you're chased. The less you need validation, the more you receive it. The less available you are, the more desired you become. Imagine what it would be like to live this way, to wake up and know that your value doesn't depend on how many messages you respond to, how many people you please, how quickly you abandon your own plans to accommodate others. Imagine the freedom of living on your own terms. To summarize what we've discussed: 1. Scarcity creates value, both for objects and for people. 2. Constant availability communicates low personal value. 3. True unavailability comes from self-sufficiency, not manipulative games. 4. Desire is intensified by mystery and diminished by certainty. 5. Establishing boundaries reveals who truly values you and who merely benefited from your excessive availability. So I ask you directly, How much of your life are you living on others' terms? How much of your time, your energy, your peace of mind are you sacrificing to remain available to people who would never do the same for you? Do an honest exercise right now. Mentally, take the last 24 hours of your life and analyze. How many decisions did you make solely to please others? How many times did you check your phone for fear of keeping someone waiting? How many times did you interrupt something important to you to attend to an external request? How many times did you say yes when your body, mind, and soul were begging to say no? If you're like most people, the result of this inventory is frightening. A study from the University of California found that the average adult checks their phone 96 times a day, once every 10 minutes. It's no coincidence that anxiety levels have increased by 40% in the last decade. We're constantly on alert, always available, always reacting. Today could be the day you begin to reclaim your power, not through manipulation, not through games, but through a conscious decision to value yourself, to protect your energy, to recognize that your availability is a precious gift that not everyone deserves. As Robert Greene puts it, you have a divine right to your own freedom, and that includes the freedom to choose when and how to interact with others. And remember, when you finally value your own company, when you find peace in solitude, when you build a life that you love, unavailability ceases to be a strategy and simply becomes a reflection of your truth. I promise you, the right people will remain in your life, not despite your boundaries, but because of them. Because people who truly deserve your time, your energy, your love, respect the fact that you respect yourself first. In our next video, Your Dark Side Holds the Secret to Your True Purpose, Jung and Campbell's Truth. We'll explore another profound dimension of the human psyche, how what we fear most in ourselves, our shadow, contains the seeds of our true purpose. What you most hide might be exactly what the world most needs from you. Don't miss it. Your shadow is waiting to reveal its most powerful secrets. If this video resonated with you, leave in the comments, "My value doesn't depend on my availability." Let's see how many are ready for this transformation. Until our next meeting.